All right, Ben, you've been tracking that.
I have. Yeah, it is expected to become a hurricane later today, probably within the next couple of hours. It's rapidly intensifying, and it looks like it's going to slip in between the Yucatan Peninsula and Cuba as it moves into the warmer waters of the Gulf of Mexico. And right now, parts of the Florida Panhandle are underneath hurricane watches, including Panama City and the Tallahassee area. So a lot of rain and a lot of wind expected there late Tuesday into Wednesday. In the meantime, around our neck of the woods, it's a little bit on the damp side, but very similar to yesterday. We're not looking at a whole lot of heavy rain, but the rain is going to be pretty persistent over the next couple of days. So keep those raincoats handy and the windshield wipers at least on an intermediate setting. Not a whole lot of rain showing up on radar. A lot of what we're seeing is that light, almost misty, drizzly stuff. I do think as we head deeper into the morning hours, as a weak weather system slips overhead, it does look like the rain is going to become a little bit more light and steady as we head into the afternoon. Most of us looking at anywhere between 1/10 and 1/4 inch of rainfall today. So not a lot, but it'll be wet through most of the afternoon. Temperatures already on the warmer side. Most of us are hanging out in the lower 50s. High temperatures today, not much warmer than where we're at. So the thermometer is probably not going to be moving very much over the next day or so. You can see we will be on a slow warming trend this week. By Wednesday, temperatures topping near 60, and it's not until later in the week when temperatures actually return to average for this time of year, which is about 63 degrees or so. So a gradual warming trend, a bit on the cooler side. But by the time we head into the second half of the work week, say beyond Wednesday, big ridge of high pressure, which is currently sitting just off to our west, is going to start to show up. That means drier conditions, and that should also mean more sunshine. So the next couple of days will be a little bit on the dreary side, more clouds than anything else, and light rain increasing through the day today. 57 for a high temperature today. We will not warm very much on Tuesday. Most of the rain activity on Tuesday is during the morning hours, drier by the afternoon. Should be completely dry on Wednesday, maybe a few showers up in the mountains, but that's about it. And then look at Thursday. Morning fog, afternoon sunshine, similar case on Friday. And guys, that sunshine should last into the upcoming weekend.